I'm a New Jersey lawyer. My name is Seymour Wasserstrom, and in this video, we're going to talk about Chapter 13, how it works, how long it takes, what you got to do to get into Chapter 13, what you got to do to succeed, and how you can benefit by having Chapter 13 in your life. What's Chapter 13? Well, it's a type of bankruptcy, and it's a very powerful type of bankruptcy. It's not something people do every day. Most people do a Chapter 7 if they want to get out of credit card debts and all kind of medical bills and all kind of unsecured debts. But people who are having trouble with their mortgages, people who are having trouble paying their rent, people who are having trouble with real estate tax liens where they might lose their house, people who are facing sheriff sales, and people who can't pay their car payments and maybe are about to have a repossession, or maybe they had a repossession and they want to get their car back. These are the type of people that may want to file Chapter 13 because of the substantial benefits they can obtain by filing Chapter 13. So let's take one at a time. If they've had their vehicle repossessed, if they act quickly, they can get their vehicle back. If they don't act quickly, then that vehicle will probably be gone and they will owe a deficiency. What that means is if they repossess your car, let's say you owe $20,000 on it, they sell it at an auction within maybe 10 days to 2 weeks. If you file bankruptcy before that auction, you can get it back. If they've sold that car, they didn't sell it at an auction for $20,000. They're lucky if they got $7,000 or $8,000. And the difference, the $12,000 or so that they lost, that's a deficiency. That's the word. And they can come after you to sue you for that $12,000 they lost. So if you want to get your car back and file Chapter 13 quickly, not only can you get it back, in most cases, you can reduce your interest rate substantially. I just had a client today, 30% interest she's paying. It's crazy. If we file Chapter 13 for her, which we intend to do, we can usually reduce that interest rate to about 6%. And sometimes we can even reduce the balances that are owed on the car. You have to have special rules and circumstances for that. But if I've got a client whose car is worth retail value $10,000, and they owe $20,000 on that car, guess what? They're only going to have to pay back $10,000 at 5% interest instead of $20,000 at 30% interest. So that's a huge, huge benefit from Chapter 13. What if you're a homeowner and you can't pay your mortgage? Well, this is May 2021, and people who aren't paying their mortgages are getting forbearances if they know about forbearances. So very few people are getting foreclosed right now. But that is going to change sooner or later. And the general law is, if you're not getting financed and benefits from the federal government and they aren't stopping foreclosures, people who start falling 3 or 4 more months behind on their payments of their mortgage, they are going to get sued for foreclosure. Now, depending what state you're in, foreclosure can go quickly or foreclosure can take a long time. Fortunately, if you're in the state of New Jersey and you know how to work the legal system legally for your benefit, which I do for quite a number of clients, you can actually delay a foreclosure for a substantial period of time. If you don't delay the foreclosure, you might have a sheriff's sale within about 8 to 12 months. And again, it varies from county to county and from the time. Right now there's a lot of foreclosure backups. There's people who haven't had sheriff sales for over a year in certain counties, and the county sheriff's office is backlogged with foreclosures, but that's going to change sooner or later. Bottom line is, if you file Chapter 13, you can stop a foreclosure. That's benefit number one. Number two, you can reduce your mortgage payments in many cases. Number three, you can ask for a modification of your mortgage where they might lower your mortgage payments and lower your interest rates and extend the term of your mortgage. You might have 25 years left on your mortgage. They might extend it to another maybe 30 years total or 40 years total even, and lower your interest rate. Right now, interest rates are pretty low, and if you got a mortgage maybe in 2008, 2009, when interest rates were higher, you might be able to refinance, or it's not really refinancing, it's called modifying your mortgage and getting a lower rate. So there are a lot of things you can do in Chapter 13. You don't need to file Chapter 13 to get a modification. That's something you can do even without Chapter 13. But Chapter 13, talking about real estate, will stop a sheriff's sale if you file before the sheriff's sale. So that's another benefit of Chapter 13. People sometimes lose their houses, not because they can't pay their mortgages, but because they can't pay their taxes. So if, I have clients come in, and I wouldn't expect it, but they own a house, $150,000 or $200,000 house, free and clear, and I'm wondering how they paid for a house that valuable because they're not making that much money. The answer is they probably inherited the house from one of their relatives, and having inherited the house, they didn't know much about home ownership and didn't realize that they had to pay real estate taxes, or they simply couldn't afford to pay the real estate taxes. So you don't necessarily lose your house immediately when you can't pay real estate taxes, but usually after 2 years. If you haven't paid your real estate taxes in New Jersey, you could very well get a foreclosure notice. And the bad thing about it is you can have a house that's worth a lot of money, you can owe a relatively small amount of money, and still lose your house to a foreclosure. For example, I've got a client, I think she's got a house worth about $135,000. She didn't pay taxes. I'm not sure how she got the house, but it's free and clear, no mortgage, but she owes about $30,000 in taxes. If we don't do something quickly for her and we want to file bankruptcy, she's got to get us some more information and things that she's got to bring to us. But she could, if she doesn't do anything quickly, she could lose that $130,000 house just because she owes about $30,000 in taxes. It doesn't sound very fair. It isn't very fair in my opinion, but that's the law. So those are what they call secured debts. The mortgage is a secured debt, meaning if you don't pay your mortgage, they can take your house. A tax lien is really a secured debt also because they have a lien on your house. That's when somebody pays the taxes on your house. That's what's called a lien, L-I-E-N, and that means you can't sell your house without paying that off. It's sort of like a mortgage. And with a car is a secured debt as well because your car title is collateral or security on your car. If you don't pay your car, they can repossess it. If you file bankruptcy, they normally can't repossess it, and you can get the car back if you file quickly. So those are three of the major reasons people file Chapter 13 and three of the major benefits. Stop that foreclosure, stop that sheriff's sale, get your car back on a repo or stop the repo, and stop the tax lien foreclosure against your house. Now that's not all. Those are the major benefits that you can get pretty much only in Chapter 13. There are other benefits that you can get in Chapter 13, and they're primarily the same benefits that you would get in a Chapter 7. So if you watch this Chapter 7 video, you got a good idea of what you can do to wipe out debts in Chapter 7. Chapter 13, I'll just review the type of debts you can get out of in a Chapter 13, in addition to the other benefits I mentioned. So everybody pretty much knows credit card debts. Credit card debts you can get rid of. Chapter 7, Chapter 13, whatever I'm saying about 13 applies to Chapter 7 as well. If you owe old income taxes, there's certain specific rules, but old income taxes usually more than 3 years old, whether it's a federal government or state of New Jersey, you can wipe those out if you meet certain obligations and criterion for those taxes. Not everybody can do it, but if you filed your taxes more than 3 years ago and it's more than 3 years old on the taxes, I'll explain that to you if you want to give me a call. And there's also some stuff on my website about that because it is a little bit complicated, but if you do it right, you can wipe out old income taxes, and my website is wipeoutyourbills.com. Also, utility bills, gas, electric, telephone, cable, all that stuff you can wipe out. And if you had your electric turned off or your gas turned off, I just had a lady today, I think she told me she owes $8,000 on her electric bill. She hasn't been shut off yet because of COVID, but if she doesn't file bankruptcy, and she's going to, she'll eventually be shut off. But during normal days, no one would have probably gotten the bill that high without being shut off. So people have come to me more than $8,000 behind, and they're shut off, and we get the electric turned right back on by filing bankruptcy. Same thing with gas. You got to turn your gas back on, and all the bills are wiped out. Future bills you got to pay. The old bills are wiped out. The other loans that oftentimes we come across, and these are very high interest loans, payday loans. If you're taking out payday loans, you probably know you might have borrowed $500, and if you had to pay it all back, it's $1,000 or $1,500. They have very, very high interest rates. A lot of these companies are offshore companies, and they're not governed by the laws of the United States. But you can get stuck with a lot of interest on payday loans, but you can get rid of them in bankruptcy. Surcharges on your driver's license. People who commit violations, driving violations, especially if it's driving without insurance, reckless driving, driving while revoked, and of course DUI, driving under the influence. When you go to court, if you're found guilty, not only are you fined by the court, you could have paid all your fines to the court, and then about a month later you get a letter from the MVC. A lot of people call it DMV. It's not the DMV anymore, it's the Motor Vehicle Commission, and you might get a letter saying you owe us $1,000 a year for 3 years because these are the surcharges by the Motor Vehicle Commission. If you don't pay them, you're probably not going to get your license. They might give you a payment plan, but you might not be able to afford it. I've got people with $10,000, $20,000 in surcharges. They haven't had their license for years. We file a bankruptcy, whether it's a Chapter 13 or Chapter 7. You wipe out the surcharges. If that's the only thing keeping you from getting your license, you can get your license. You stop anybody from suing you. If people are suing you, they could probably take money out of your paycheck. That's called a wage garnishment. They usually get 10% of your paycheck. They could freeze your bank account, and they do all sorts of stuff to try to collect. So all these things are stopped by Chapter 13. All these debts are usually wiped out by Chapter 13. Sometimes you got to pay a small percentage of your debts, and that's only if you meet special qualifications. Usually you have a high amount of income, or there's some other specific rules that will prevent you from wiping out your unsecured debts. But I would say the vast majority of my cases, if people come in there and are behind in their mortgage, behind their car payments, then and we incorporate the unsecured debts, those debts generally get wiped out 100%. The other thing I didn't mention is eviction. We've been talking about sheriff sales. There's also eviction for not paying your rent. And those evictions have been stopped by COVID, but again, they'll be back on the table for evictions once the COVID restrictions are taken off the books. And if you file a bankruptcy before the court hearing date, your best bet, there's a special rule on evictions by landlords. If you owe a lot of money and back rent and you want to stop the eviction and stay in your home, the best bet would be to file your bankruptcy before the court eviction date. There's special rules on that. We can explain that to you. But if you're facing eviction and you want to file bankruptcy, you're going to be a lot better off if you file that bankruptcy before the court date. One more thing you should know about Chapter 13 is after you file, you do have to appear at a meeting in the Southern District. Isabel Balboa is the trustee. In Trenton, there's a gentleman called Albert Russo. And in Newark, there's a trustee, very nice lady named Marie Ann Greenberg. They're all very nice. I didn't mean not to say the other ones aren't nice. But they administer your case, and they will preside. Either they or one of their attorneys will talk to you on the phone or sometimes by video and interview you for about a 10-minute meeting where you have to disclose your assets, your income, and things of that nature. After that, you have to make sure you make all your trustee payments. You do have to make certain payments. We'll talk about that on another video, so you'll realize what you have to pay and what you don't have to pay when you file Chapter 13. I hope this was helpful information to you. I want you to know that Chapter 13 is a very powerful type of bankruptcy. Don't feel stressed. I would say feel blessed that you do have the opportunity to file Chapter 13 and stop those bill collectors dead in their tracks. Go up against those big corporate giants, because the giant banks that are trying to foreclose have to stop foreclosure. The giant credit card companies that are suing you have to stop the lawsuits. Those big corporate giants who financed your car, they have to stop any repossession, and we can save you a lot of money by filing Chapter 13. A lot more information on my website. We got a lot of blogs, a lot of good videos on my website if you want to check them out. The website is wipeoutyourbills.com. I'm attorney Seymour Wasserstrom. You can reach me at 856-696-8300. I'm always happy to talk to you. I'm happy to help. Wish you all the best. God bless.